When I sort of realised that there was no way I was going to go into a business and fit in, and the alternative was to really stand out. I think you can do that through age, or you do that through whatever.
So, Laura, hi.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Let's get stuck in. Your career is amazing. You've held positions as creative director and chief creative officer at some incredible agencies.
Yeah.
You've been president of D&AD. Wow. And I know you're on a mission to use creativity to create real impact, positive impact in the world, which I love. And I'm sure we'll delve into that. As part of that, you founded mentorship resources, including SheSays, which again, I'm trying to be a part of at the moment. I'll let you know about that. Please tell me more, because it's a really exciting time for you. You're obviously very established in your career, but you've just 9 months ago started your own agency. So can you tell me a bit more about that and about your current role?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Uncharted with 2 amazing women in the industry who are dear friends. We've all worked with each other in different kinds of ways. But really, it came through a conversation probably about 12 months ago when we were sitting around talking about the state of the industry, some of the, I guess, the hurdles that we were feeling coming from the big networks, some of the ways in which we thought creatives should be responding to the challenges that are sort of coming up sort of now and in the future, and thought, you know what, rather than go somewhere and try to fix it, why don't we actually start our own thing? So yeah, the 3 of us got together, launched Uncharted, and we're absolutely loving it.
Oh, I'm so pleased.
Yeah.
Really exciting times. And love to see, obviously, a female-founded agency as well. We'll touch on that, I'm sure, as well. But we're here to talk about age. And your extended Uncharted team has an age range of, I know you mentioned 17 to kind of 70s, which is incredible. And I'd love to know a bit more about how that level of diversity impacts what you deliver and the ways that you work as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, you know, when we founded Uncharted, it was on 2 principles. One was around being kind of tech forward and leaning into all the new technology, because that's what excites us. And, you know, it helps to do braver work in a more, I guess, effective way, sort of, you know, understanding that something that you're going to do is actually going to work before you do it. And the other side of things, the 3 of us are incredibly passionate about diversity of thought, diversity of background, and the fact that the more diverse the teams, the more interesting the work. Because, you know, creativity is just smashing things together that haven't been smashed together before and sort of building off that into somewhere new. And I think our industry has really suffered from that pool being, you know, a relatively small pool, considering all the other, you know, creative resources and creative brains and thinkers that are out there. So actually, that was a foundation of our business. And what we've done is, you know, we've got a small core team, but then we have a community or a collective of, at the moment, about 60 different thinkers.
Wow.
Creatives, designers, technologists, strategists, and we build the teams around the briefs depending on what the briefs are for the clients. So they get real expertise in areas that otherwise maybe they wouldn't, but they also get, you know, for example, someone who is part of the community that they are kind of serving or creating work for as part of that as well. And it allows us to, you know, kind of really go far and wide in terms of the people within that community.
I love to hear that you have actively searched for having a really diverse team. And there's plenty of studies about how lots of different diversities enhance a team in terms of productivity and delivery on business objectives. What does it do for creativity to have a team that diverse in terms of age?
It just means that you can come at briefs in really different ways. So you have, you know, if I'm working on a project at the moment with sort of the oldest member of the team, and he will come at something in a completely different way to what I would, or to what, you know, a junior sort of team or junior designer would. And so that just gives you different perspectives, new ways in, different ideas, but it just creates something that isn't kind of the norm. And particularly at the moment when you look at you know, what's happening with AI and the kind of blandification of what we're seeing, because everything gets brought towards the middle, and what we're seeing in terms of macro trends around, every Airbnb looking the same, for example, and et cetera, et cetera. I think having that age perspective as well as other perspectives just gives us something a little bit exciting and new.
Have you personally ever felt too young or too old for the role that you've had at that time?
I think I've often felt one or the other or both.
Right.
I have felt sometimes too young for the job, or maybe not qualified enough for the job, or kind of too new into that role. Part of that, I guess, is just that feeling of imposter syndrome that I think everyone has. But I think it's a real superpower to be able to go in somewhere and to be yourself. And more generally, when I sort of realized that there was no way I was going to go into a business and kind of fit in, and the alternative was to really stand out. I think you can do that through age, or you do that through whatever. But the more you can bring your own ideas and your own kind of full self to the party creatively, again, the more interesting the ideas are, because you're not contained in this little sort of box of what people are expecting.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. How have you found the confidence to do that? And is that something that's grown as you've aged?
I think confidence always grows as you age, but somewhere inside me, I've always had a little bit of a kind of pushing back against people underestimating what I was capable of, I guess, or just like I said, the fact that I always sort of stood out or did things that were a bit different. So I've always, I guess, in a way, had to back myself, or I just wasn't able to kind of, toe the line and fit in, I think. I'm not very good at doing that. So I just found what was natural to me.
I love that. Well, that's what makes a creative visionary, right? Is if you don't want to sort of stay the same, or you want to stand out. So that's really exciting to me. In terms of standing out, you own, obviously, you founded a female-owned business. How important is that to the creative industry today?
I mean, I think it's incredibly important, because there aren't a lot of us, if any. I'm sure there are female-founded creative agencies out there who just haven't had the publicity that we're lucky enough to have, because, we've got this sort of place in the industry, because it's so much harder for women to get publicity in the industry to start off with. But, there certainly aren't a lot of us. And it's really important to show that women can do every single role within that agency. Particularly, when I first started, I think there were barely any, if any, chief creative officers, maybe Kate Stanners. There are a couple of really well-known female designers, but not a lot. When we started SheSays, maybe 10%, I want to say, 3% of creative directors were women when I started.
Wow.
It was the 3% conference. I think it's, moved up to maybe more like 20% now in the UK. There's still not enough. But design and creative roles traditionally, and tech roles, have been really, really heavily skewed one way. And you're just missing out on, again, like so many different ideas, points of view. When I started out, someone actually said to me, "You can't work on that project because it's funny and women don't know how to be funny."
No.
Yeah.
Well, who said that?
I'm not. That's not that long ago. It's maybe 15 years ago. So, things have changed dramatically, but they really need to change more, and particularly in leadership, and showing other women that it's possible and you can do it.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that the latest stats from D&AD say that 17% of creative directors in the UK are women. That was half that about 10 years ago, exactly to your point. What other changes can people make to help and support that change, in particular around mentorship? Because I know that's something close to your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, mentorship is incredibly important. And if you're in a position to mentor, I would recommend you absolutely do, because you get so much out of it as well. Like, it keeps you interesting and fresh, and exposes you to new perspectives, and like women isn't one big homogenous community. There are lots of different kind of perspectives, obviously within our 50% of the population, and so I'm always kind of mentoring as many people as I can personally or through other mentor schemes as well, whether that's sort of WACL or through the program that the One Show or the Leahs have, or through SheSays, through our Who's Your Mama program. But I mean, it's such a great thing to do, and it's such a great thing to ask for as well. And I think sometimes you don't want to ask for a mentor, or you don't want to say as a woman that you don't know something, or you're having difficulty with something, because it is so hard, and it's so hard to kind of push through. But I'd really encourage everyone also to ask for a mentor. Regardless of where you are in your career, I think you can always do with a mentor.
I think that's really valuable, and something I'm guilty of, I suppose, because I am a mentor through Kerning the Gap, and I'm very, very proud of that. But I haven't looked yet for my own mentor. Do you have a mentor personally now?
I've got a couple of mentors, actually. Yeah, I do. Up until about 18 months ago, I had someone who was much more formal. And they were incredible because actually they mentored me around the business side of the business. So, when you go through as a creative or a designer, you're often kept away from the money and how the business works and what have you. And I was in a position where very much I was front and center and had to be leading that part of the agency. So he was absolutely incredible at helping me there. Someone that was a good, steady hand and had lots of ideas and really helped me a lot.
Amazing. And that brings me to a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago. We spoke about there's almost a fork in the road when it comes to creative roles, that you either progress yourself as a really highly skilled practitioner, or you go into kind of management or business, which can be hard to access. Are creative roles at a senior level very, very too black and white in terms of those two choices to make?
I wouldn't necessarily say they're too black and white, but I think there's not been enough of a voice in terms of maybe how else you could deliver those roles. And there's certainly not enough training. So some people really do just want to stay and be practitioners, and that is brilliant. And I have, a bunch of people even in the crew who are the best practitioners that I know. They're absolutely incredible, but they're not interested necessarily in, managing a big team or operational stuff or what have you. You get other people who are, really fantastic at that and take like it to, so duck to water. There's not a lot of training to help those who want to step up, but they're not sure how to do it.
Yeah.
I think when you look at the IPA and they have, much more formal courses around, sort of stepping up into leadership in terms of being an account person, there's not so much the equivalent for creative. D&AD are running a course at the moment, and actually it's open at the moment for people to take, and I think there are bursaries for it. So a creative leadership course. It's got some amazing people teaching on it. And D&AD did used to run that when I kind of took my first step up, and actually it was the first time anyone had ever sent me on a piece of training.
Okay.
And my agency sent me on that course, and it was sort of 3 days residential. And I learned so much about just the beginnings of how to manage a team, like how to give effective feedback, understanding who you are and what your personality is like, understanding how you might need to change what you say to be able to give effective feedback to other people. Certainly nothing about the money in the business, but about kind of managing a team. So I think we need more of that. I think people seem to think that somehow creativity, it's just like there and it's this magical thing and it doesn't need investment, but it does need some training, I think, for those managing jobs.
Absolutely. There seems to be, you work your way up in terms of a creative career, and you get to a point and suddenly you've got a team of people and you're having to make business level decisions and engage with people, founders and different people in industry. And you need to have a different level of conversation, and all of a sudden you're kind of exposed to that very different world without any of that formal training. So I'm really pleased to hear that that's out there, because that's my style of learning, is that kind of really studious, sit down 3 days, get stuck in. So I'm really interested to learn about that. I'll do some digging on that
I think
as well.
the first time, I was on a board, which was a long time ago now, and I was the creative representative on that board, but, no one even sat down to show me how to read a spreadsheet, how to read a P&L, what any of the financial side of the business meant. And I'd kind of sit in those meetings trying to absorb it and learn by absorption. But actually, someone sitting down with me for a couple of hours going, this is how it works, would have been amazing.
Yeah, that's it. There's a gap there. I think, at a certain level where it's a big leap and it's worth investment in learning at all stages, of course, to make that leap. And on that kind of learning journey and on that topic, there's obviously a lot of influence. You're very busy, you're involved in different boards, you've won loads of awards. There's so much to think about when you're in a creative leadership role. I don't actually know how you do it. Seems like a lot of pressure to really stay current. And obviously that's something that we all need to continue learning, continue getting different inspiration. How do you go about staying current and being brave in what you do?
I mean, to be honest, I think having this crew, the Uncharted crew really helps. So having an amazing person who is 17 and at college doing a creative degree and being able to learn from them, having someone in their 70s and being able to learn from them and, the real craft of some things, just having exposure to different people and different backgrounds as well. So, you can break outside of your bubble a little bit and discover things that otherwise you wouldn't discover. I think obviously all creatives have got to be very naturally curious, and I am definitely that. But I would say like my curiosity, as much as it's, going to exhibitions or, reading things or looking at blogs, it really is listening to people. I think that's where I get my most inspiration from.
Fantastic. I love that because it brings us to a topic that's really it's a loud conversation in the industry right now, obviously around AI and the fact that some disciplines might be swept out from under our feet almost. Yeah. What qualities do creatives need to have right now and what kind of power skills, softer skills, power skills do we need to embody to really stay ahead?
Yeah. Look, I would say curiosity, as I said, energy and optimism, and that, so the power that drives things forwards. All the things that you would usually need as a creative, but I would say, just as everything was done on a bromide and now it's, suddenly it was done on a desktop computer, now it's going to be done in AI. Those practical skills are going to be really important because it is quite a competitive landscape. And I think the creative industry has been underfunded in the UK for many years now. Hopefully that is changing. But clients' budgets are never going to get bigger and those opportunities are never, going to, explode into something that they're not. The economy is just kind of too tight for those kinds of things. So I would say if you want to be hireable, all of those soft skills, the stuff that you have always had to have, the curiosity, the nimbleness, the collaboration, being able to I guess empathy, as a real superpower as well, being really able to understand who you're making something for. And then also don't be afraid of those tools because those tools haven't been made necessarily for everyone, but they are for everyone. And the worry I have with the industry is there is a narrow band of people who are kind of taking to the tools because it's more techie and it's more kind of maybe geeky. So that is by definition then going to make those people more hireable, unfortunately. But that is part of, the way it is. It doesn't mean I don't think that any of the jobs that we have will disappear, but they will fundamentally change, some of them. Yeah,
absolutely. And hopefully that will give us more freedom to think conceptually and think and have that empathy, things that, AI can't do.
Yeah.
You spoke then about optimism being really important as a principle in the creative field. How optimistic do you feel about the industry, say, for the next 5 to 10 years?
I mean, I'm really excited by the industry because some of these changes, as long as enough interesting people actually start to use the tools and get behind them and what have you, they are allowing different kinds of creative projects, different kinds of businesses to flourish. If I'm just thinking about Uncharted, prior to kind of the technical advancement of the last 3 years, maybe. I mean, AI has been around for a long time, and there are some brilliant companies working in cultural intelligence and those kinds of things that have used it for a long time. But there's never been such an opportunity for an agency 9 months old to do something that is properly global, where I don't have to, sit and artwork 1,000 banners to put 1,000 different languages in and go, oh my God, Dutch doesn't fit. If any of you come from an old school digital background, you'll know that pain. It's like, oh God, it's German. I can't get it to fit in the back. Now there are tools to be able to do that stuff, but it just means that we're able to be, much more nimble, much more global, have global perspectives, and partner with other really interesting independent businesses that are also doing similar things. So there isn't as much of a bonus in being big now, I don't think.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that nimble global approach is something that you've really harnessed in your agency.
Yeah, absolutely. We work with creatives all over the world. We did a piece of work for the UN General Assembly, actually, last year, which was for White Ribbon Alliance. They're an organisation that advocates for better maternal health outcomes. So
amazing.
They needed to do something at the UN. It had to cut through all the other stuff at the UN. Using some of these tools and using a global network of fantastic creatives, we were able to do a 300 portrait series in not that long a time. I did most of the artworking myself. Thank you. I will give a call out to Adobe that did 90% of it for me. But, again, that would have taken an idea. The idea that we had would have been inaccessible to a not-for-profit because they just would not have had the money to do something so ambitious. And actually, it kind of really helped them to deliver something that was so much more standout, so much more exciting. And then combining that with amazing young illustrators from Uganda and Kenya and Nigeria and Indonesia and Nepal and India. Yeah, it was really beautiful.
Amazing. Yeah. That sounds fascinating. I love the sound of that.
Yeah.
Awesome. If we're to zoom out now and think about your generation, so you're 51, what unique skills do you feel people of your age bring to the creative landscape?
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? I think a lot of resilience. I think we were the generation that has probably had their head down and grafted the hardest out of anyone. There was no flexible working. You had to do a 60-hour week. When my son was small, our childminder would drop him off at my work and I'd stick him underneath my table till 2:00 in the morning.
Really?
Yeah. So, that comes with some benefits, but it was really, really hard work. So I think we know what hard work is, and that makes the best of us also understand how to do things better.
Yeah.
So I think that is a real benefit. And I think, we also went through in those formative years a really weird kind of phase, particularly as a creative woman in the late 90s and early 2000s, where there was all of this talk about the fact that there was no sexism and everything was completely equal and yada yada, and it blatantly wasn't. We've kind of been through that once as well. So I think we're quite canny operators, and I do think we're all optimists, and we've all probably got far more crazy backgrounds because we weren't having to deal with social media in our 20s, then I do really, really feel for people who've grown up with social media and what it's done in terms of people having to worry about things like what they post, or do they wear fancy dress because someone's going to take the mickey out of them. And we were kind of free from all of that. So it was I guess, sort of quite a wild time.
Yeah.
So I think we've got that to bring to the table.
I narrowly escaped the social media onslaught, I suppose, where I could go out in fancy dress and I'm pleased there's no photos. You know, it was a freeing time. I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I love that you talk about optimism and that you've taken what you've learned and really made good of it in your own agency, in terms of it's not, you know, I worked hard so you have to as well. You've really taken the best of what you've learned across those years into your practices now.
Yeah, and I've been lucky to have worked for some really inspirational people as well, who are very forward thinking, who, you know, it's great to kind of look back on that and go, okay, they did that and that was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
What piece of advice then, again, thinking about having a diverse age range of influence around you, what piece of advice or learnings have you had from somebody in a different generation that you've really taken forward?
That's a really great question. I think the humbleness of people when they're older, I've taken a lot from that, actually. Some people, you know, including the people that we work with, who are so incredibly talented and have so much to give, but the humbleness and their willingness to listen, I guess, has been kind of quite inspirational. So that definitely. And I guess from the youngest member of the team, maybe allowing myself to put them in charge of things that they know better at.
Nice, okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, you've got to celebrate the strengths of who you're working with, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that makes perfect sense.
You know, to be able to go, actually, how does that work? Because I don't know.
Yeah. But vulnerability around, you know, your own knowledge and any kind of spots that you don't understand as well. You know, it's good to lean into that, and another opportunity for you to learn as well.
Yeah,
isn't
absolutely.
It?
And I think that's something you learn as you get older as well, as you really don't know everything.
Yes. Yeah. I was speaking to my husband about that the other day, actually, is you can appear confident quite easily if you put it on. And then you might feel confident, and that's wonderful. But when you're really confident is when you realise what you don't know and you ask about it. I love that in a person, as if, what does that word mean? Or what exactly do you mean by that? Or can you tell me more about what you mean there? I think that empathy piece that you spoke about, and that vulnerability and resilience to learn, I think is a wonderful thing. So I've got a lot of love for that. You spoke then about willingness to learn, and that's a wonderful thing. Some LinkedIn data I was reading the other day said that 1 in 5 Gen Z workers haven't had a single direct conversation with somebody over 50 at work in over a year.
God. Wow.
There's a serious lack of communication. There's an issue here in terms of intergenerational working. There's some nervousness about kind of dealing with each other. Are there any tips for collaborating that you've really harnessed in your business, or advice that you'd give to others about working with a broad age range?
I guess in terms of what I've learned over kind of my career is, I guess it all comes back to listening first, and that vulnerability piece, I think. So, you know, if you're in a position to be leading a team, one of the most beautiful things that we ever did when I was at Grey was do these sessions where people just spoke about themselves.
Nice.
And that was really open. So some people spoke about where they've come from a work point of view. Some people spoke about, you know, really personal stories. And another set of sessions that we did, which was called I Wish I'd Done That, where people would come and show something every week. I'd pull someone's name out of a hat and they would do a bit of a show and tell. It didn't have to be in our industry. It could be anything. And what you learned from that was people are a lot more than their age, you know, different interests, different passions, different stories, different backgrounds that, you know, can surprise you or shock you, or you realize you have something in common with someone, even though you on the outside are very different. And I think all of those opportunities to be sharing with vulnerability just helps create those connections a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds really fun.
It is really fun.
Amazing. I might start doing that at work. Would be fascinating to know what people are up to at home.
Yeah.
It's a difficult time for people entering the industry for lots of different reasons. Is there any single piece of advice that you would give someone trying to get into a creative career right now?
Yeah, I would just say be tenacious. So you can't hassle someone too much. I'm sure some people would disagree with me, but I often get questions from students who are about to enter the industry, like, I've emailed that creative director a couple of times, or I've emailed that designer a few times and they haven't gotten back. Should I, when should I email them again? I'm like, honestly, be like a dog to a bone. Do not let it go. Do all of your research first and figure out where it is that you want to work with, find opportunities to be maybe kind of networking with those people if you can. For some people, it's really hard, particularly if a lot of those senior people are in London and you're not. But find the networks that you can join and do as much of that as possible as well. But yeah, really, it's like just keep at it, keep harassing people. The good people won't care. They might have missed it. It might have just they might have meant to get back to you and then didn't and then forgotten about it. It happens to me all the time.
Yeah, that's great advice. Super practical advice. I love it. What has been, if we think then about these emerging creatives, and you mentioned in your team you work with some young people, is there any kind of behaviours or principles that have been lost that perhaps we need to develop more in younger creative teams?
I think this is one for the whole of the industry. And again, it kind of comes back to listening. We are at heart really almost an apprenticeship-based industry, right? You might study beforehand, but really everything that you really need to know, you learn on the job. And the one difficulty, I think, with the flexible working situation at the moment is the disparity between what young people need and what they want, and what more seasoned people need and what they want. It doesn't mean that all young people want one thing and all people further on in their careers want something different, but there needs to be a holistic conversation about what works for people, because young people without the experience of the older people kind of working next to them, asking them why did you do that? It doesn't have to be maybe even really in the same space, but setting up some kind of a space where young people can learn. It's really hard to progress.
Yeah.
And I think it's also really hard to progress when, for example, client budgets are smaller, and so you might just send the one senior creative or the one, whoever on a shoot, for example. But everything you learn about doing a shoot, you learn from being on shoots.
Yeah.
So it is about taking care, really caring about young people as they come through the industry and making sure that we're protecting ourselves for the future. And I think in the rush to be cost efficient or, bend to everyone else's individual needs, what we're not doing is thinking about the industry as a whole and how to support young people coming through the industry and make sure that they have the skills that they're going to need in, 5 years, 10 years time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big investment, isn't it? You'll know, obviously, as an agency owner, that to train and invest in people attending shoots and learning through osmosis and being in the room and being at client presentations, that sort of thing, it is a big investment. And I think it's important to recognise that.
Yeah.
But it's so important. You see people learning in the room, the right people really pick up on that sort of stuff. Yeah. And it's how I learned and really enjoyed the learning process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's how all of us have learned. So to expect anything other than that from, people coming through the industry now is really unfair.
Yeah, absolutely. My first shoot was for Morrison's egg packaging. And I woke up at 4 a.m, drove to North Yorkshire and was literally picking up chickens and placing them in the right position on a field. Nobody told me. Chickens don't actually want to be free range. They just want to huddle together under a tree. So I was just dashing backwards and forwards, putting the chickens in the right place. And it was all photoshopped afterwards anyway. So yeah, I learned a lot about chickens, maybe not about photography that day, but it was fun. It stayed with me.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah. I learned today that only 17% of people feel motivated to go to work every day. which is really shocking. And I feel quite passionately that that's about knowing what you, as you mentioned, what you need and what you want, and making sure that your career is drawn into those right directions. And that, I suppose, that comes with age and with confidence. Do you feel now like you know what you need and you know what you want?
Yeah, I do, but I'm also open to, you know, like new things and being completely wrong. And I think that is the joyful bit of, you know, what we do. Yes, absolutely. You know, and much more so than when I was young. But like, I think I'm also incredibly open to the fact that, like I said, I could be completely wrong about all of it.
Yeah. That's good. An environment that allows you to fail is a really powerful thing. And I suppose going back to the social media aspect of kind of younger digital natives have grown up where there's a lot of pressure. It's hard to see yourself fail, perhaps because you're being watched or you're putting too much pressure on yourselves. So I think that's a really pivotal kind of swing that we need to make in terms of allowing people to fail more.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the thing that, you know, when I think about kind of goals and what I want and what I need, that for me has always been being somewhere that stimulates me, learning new things, you know, having the idea of having a bit of a creative adventure, you know, trying stuff out. Like that for me has been quite a motivation. It's not been, I want to be a chief creative officer, or I want to start an agency, or I want to earn this much money, or, you know, my goals have always been like find the place that is the most creatively stimulating for me.
And what a journey it's been so far.
Yeah.
I love that. The idea of not a career, a creative adventure is a really wonderful thing. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot. You're a real inspiration. You know, to have creative female leaders means a lot to me, means a lot to a lot of people. And I'm really excited to see where your agency goes and grows in the coming years. So thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.